A researcher randomly divides 50 bean plants into two groups. He puts one group by a window to receive natural light and the second group under artificial light. He records the growth of the plants weekly. Which data collection method is described in this situation? We have observational study, controlled experiment, survey, and systematic sample. So, in this situation, the correct method that's been used is a controlled experiment. Why? It's because a controlled experiment means is when we have a situation where we use two different methods to see which one is which one records the growth of the plants weekly, which means which method was the growth of the plants quicker. Which scenario is best described as an observational study? We have for a class project, students in health class ask every 10th student entering the school if they eat breakfast in the morning. Or a social researcher wants to learn whether or not there is a link between attendance and grades. She gathers data from 15 school districts. Or a researcher wants to learn whether or not there is a link between children's daily amount of physical activity and their overall energy level. During lunch at the local high school, she distributed a short questionnaire to students in the cafeteria. Or we have 60 seniors take a course in advanced algebra concepts are randomly divided into two classes. One class uses a graphing calculator all the time, and the other class never uses graphing calculators. A guidance counselors want to determine whether there is a link between graphing calculators use and students' final exam grades. So those are four different types of scenarios, and they ask us here which one best describes as an observational study. So the correct answer is when a social worker, for example, wants to learn whether or not there is a link between attendance and grades, so she gathers data from 15 school districts, which basically means, for example, let's just say someone wants to learn there is a link or something common between two things, and what they do is they gather informations and data and they calculate it to see which one, if to see, for example, if there's actually something common or a link between them two. A grocery store conducts an online study in which customers are randomly selected and asked to provide feedback on their shopping experience. We have, is it an experiment, a survey, or is observational study? So what's saying it here is a grocery store conducts an online study. So what they do is they ask customers randomly selected questions and they ask us to give them their feedback. That is definitely not an experiment. And maybe it's a survey, and it's definitely not an observation study because it's not thinking or finding anything common between two in the data. And it's definitely not an experiment. Obviously, we're not conducting an experiment. So it's a survey. And survey basically means when someone wants to give their honest opinion about a specific thing. A park department employee wants to know if latex paint is more durable than non-latex paint. She has 50 park benches painted with latex paint and has 50 park benches painted with non-latex paint. Is it an experiment, a survey, or observational study? So again, it's definitely not a survey because it's not asking anyone a question, and it's not an observational study. Again, it doesn't link between two things. It's an experiment because we have the park department employee wants to know whether latex paint is more durable than non-latex paint. So there is different types of method that she used. She has 50 park benches painted with latex paint and 50 park benches with non-latex paint. So that is definitely an experiment.
The question says, a number is selected at random from the set below. What is the probability that the number is odd? Now, the numbers we have are -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and -3. Since the question asks, what is the probability of the number being odd? So, let's exclude all the even numbers. In our case, The even numbers are -2, 0, and 2. We are now left with -3, -1, 1, and -3, which are all odd numbers. So in total, we have 3 even numbers and 4 odd numbers, which equals to 7 numbers in total. And since we have 4 odd numbers, the probability of us choosing a random number and it being odd is 4/7.
Which negative real number is not in the domain of 3 over x to the power of 2 minus 4? We all know that the domain is x values. So we need to solve for x. And it needs to be negative. In order to solve for x, we need to factorize this expression. Let's try to factorize it. X to the power of 2 minus 4 equals to 0. Now in order to factorize, we need to find two numbers that will give us a product of -4 and x to the power of 2. And those two numbers are, when we factorize, it will give us a product of a bracket x minus 2, another bracket x plus 2. Now we need to solve for x in order to find the value of x. So we're going to set each expression alone and equal it to 0. So it will be x minus 2 equals to 0. Move 2 to the other side. It will be x equals 2. The same thing here, x plus 2 equals to 0. It will give us -2, -2. X equals -2. Now they said in the question that they needed a negative real number. So the answer will be x equals -2.
If f of x is equals x squared, what is the value of f of 2I? I is equals to square root -1, and I squared is equals to -1. Here we will write the equation again, but this time we will replace x by 2I. After replacing x by 2I, next step is we're going to expand it. We're going to write 2 squared and I squared. 2 squared is 4 and I squared is -1. 4 times -1 is equals to -4. So the right answer is -4.
If f of x equals x squared, what is the value of fi cubed? So there are choices and we need to choose the correct answer by solving it. We're going to write fi cubed equals I cubed to the power of 2. So we know that I equals square root of -1, which is equal to brackets, rounded brackets, square root of -1 cubed to the power of 2 equals square root of -1 multiplied by square root of -1 multiplied by square root of -1 to the power of 2, which is equals to -1 multiplied by square root of -1 to the power of 2 equals -1 to the power of 2 multiplied by -1 equals 1 multiplied by -1, which is equal to -1. So we're going to write fi cubed equals -1. The answer is -1. This is the correct answer.
In this matrix, we have 2 rows and 2 columns, which will give us a product of a 2 by 2 matrix. Always remember that rows come first, then the column. Now, if we want to multiply this matrix, we're going to take the scalar value, which is -5, and distribute it to the elements of this matrix, which are 2, 0, 5, and -5. -5 times 2 is equals to -10, which is in choice A, choice B, but not in choice C, nor choice D. -5 times 0 is equals to 0, which is also in choice A and B. -5 times 5 is -25, which again in choice A and B. -5 times -5 is equals to 25, which is only in choice B. So the answer is choice B. Use the matrix definitions below to answer the question that follows. Based on the definitions above, which of the following matrix products is defined? As you can see here that the choices are in multiplication, and multiplication has a rule in the defined process. The defined rule in multiplication says that the number of columns in the first matrix must equal to the number of rows in the second matrix. Let's try to solve an example to find if QR in choice A is defined or not. So as you can see here that Q has 2 rows and 2 columns, which will give us a product of a 2 by 2 matrix. Let's move to R. R has 3 columns and 3 rows, which will give us a 3 by 3 matrix. Always remember that the row comes first, then the column. Now the rule says that the number of columns in the first matrix, which is number 2 here, equals to the number of rows in the second matrix, which is the 3 here. As you can see here that 2 and 3 are not equal, which means that Q and R are not defined. So Q and R are not correct. Let's move to the second choice, which is Q and S. Choice B says that Q and S are defined. Q will give us a product of a 2 by 2 matrix, as we said in the first choice, which is choice A, while S has 3 rows and 2 columns, which will give us a product of a 3 by 2 matrix. Now the column in the first matrix is not equal to the rows in the second matrix. Here it's 2 and here it's 3, so they are not equal, which means they are not defined. So choice B is not correct. Let's move to choice C. Choice C says that S and Q are defined. Let's find out. Now S, as we said in choice B, will give us a product of a 3 by 2 matrix, while Q gives us a product of a 2 by 2 matrix. Now as you can see here, that the number of columns in the first matrix is equals to 2, and the number of rows in the second matrix is also equals to 2. So they are equal, which means they are defined. So the answer choice is C. Hello everyone, today we're going to verify if two matrices are inverses or not. So first thing first, we need to know the identity of the inverse. So the identity of inverse should be 1, 0, 0, 1. So in order the two matrices to be inverses, the new matrix should look like this. And now let's multiply. As you can see, the first matrix has 2 rows and 2 columns, so 2 by 2, as well as the second matrix. It has 2 rows and 2 columns. As you can see that the inner numbers are a match, so they are defined and we can multiply them. And the outer numbers will be the layout of the new matrix, 2 by 2. So the layout of the new matrix will have 2 rows, 2 columns, and 4 elements. And now let's multiply. So let's find out the first element. We're going to take the top row of the first matrix and the left column of the second matrix. I'm going to multiply -2 by 1 over 2 plus 4 times 1 over 2 equal to 1. So the first element is 1. And now the second element. We're going to take the top row of the first matrix and the right column of the second matrix. We're going to multiply -2 by 1 over 4 plus 4 times 1 over 4 equal to 0.5. So the second element is 0.5. And now the third element. We're going to take the bottom row of the first matrix and the left column of the second matrix. We're going to multiply 4 by 1 over 2 plus -4 by 1 over 2. The answer is 0. So the third element is 0. And now the last element. We're going to take the bottom row of the first matrix and the right column of the second matrix. We're going to multiply 4 by 1 over 4 plus -4 times 1 over 4 equal to 0. So as you can see that the new matrix isn't a match of the identity of an inverse. So the first matrix and the second matrix are not inverses. So the answer is no. Hope you understand. Have a good day.
So for this question, they want us to find the value of P, the value of Q, the value of R, and the value of S. And we know that these two matrices are equal. So therefore, P squared minus 1 equals to 1. Plus 1 plus 1, P squared equals to 2. We want P by itself, so we will square root P equals plus or minus square root of 2. Okay, now we're done with P. We need to find Q. So minus 3 minus Q cubed equals -4. We will add 3 both sides. So minus Q cubed equals -1. Divided by -1, divided by negative. Therefore, Q cubed equals 1. So we will do cubic root to get q by itself, cubic root, so q equals 1. Now we're done with q. Now we want the value of r, so r plus 1 equals 2 over 3. So r plus 1 equals 2 over 3. We will multiply by 3 both sides to cancel it. So 3r plus 3 equals 2. So subtract 3, 3r equals negative 1. Divided by 3, r equals negative 1 over 3. Okay, now we're done with r. Let's find the value of s. S minus 1 equals negative pi. So s minus 1 equals negative pi. So add 1 to both sides. So s equals 1 minus pi. And this is our s. So our final answers will be r equals negative 1 over 3, s equals 1 minus pi, p equals square root plus or minus 2, and finally q equals 1.